I'd like to welcome you all here to the session. It's Muslims in Public Discourse, Dealing with Misconceptions. And so while this is a topic that perhaps those of us that are comfortable speaking in public about Islam, I think that it's something that is highly pertinent to all of us in our daily lives. And I think the information here is something that we can hopefully all take away as we deal with the misperceptions that are out there, the misconceptions that are out there, and how can we dispel those in a positive way to reflect upon our communities, what our true heart is and what our true faith is. So today we have three panelists with us. So if you were here in the previous session, you were lucky enough to catch Sister Zahra Billoo. She's the Executive Director of CARE San Francisco. And in her work at CARE, she frequently provides trainings at mosques and universities as part of their efforts to empower the community while building bridges with allies on those very, very important civil rights issues. We have Brother Noorgul Dada, who is currently the chairperson of our board of directors here at the Noor Islamic Cultural Center, and he's head of our security department. And more importantly, Brother Noorgul is a long-standing member of this community who came here in his youth and has that personal experience of growing up here in our community here in Columbus. And Dr. Asma Mobin-uddin is a pediatrician, a clinical bioethicist, and a children's author. So if you are not familiar, her children's books, which are wonderful, about the Muslim American experience, have won several awards. She's the co-founder of our Ohio chapter of CARE, and she was the state president of CARE here from 2005 through 2009. So I'd like to go ahead and let them start the discussion.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming here and spending their Saturday with us. I actually don't have a lot prepared, and two reasons. One is originally I was supposed to be the moderator, and then the other reason is, more importantly, I am actually doing this session with two very intelligent and very prominent sisters, and I don't really think I can compete with them. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward both of them for their efforts and give them immense rewards for all the work that they do. Ameen. So I want to start with just an ayah from the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you have indeed in the Messenger of Allah a beautiful pattern of conduct for anyone whose hope is in Allah in the final day and who engages much in the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, in the time that we live in, it is really essential for us to understand how the Prophet ﷺ dealt in these situations, in these difficult times. Because if you look at his life, he tried very hard, even his family members, very close, his uncles, did not believe in his message, rejected him, persecuted him, and eventually he had to leave. So that is why this ayah is extremely important, is that no matter what situation the Prophet ﷺ was in, he was always his best. His conduct, his akhlaq, and how he dealt even with his enemies was the best. And so that's how we really have to work to kind of eradicate the misconceptions about Muslims. It really is going to come down to you and I. You know, because people aren't going to come to the masjid and learn about Islam and are going to agree with everything we say. It is more important in how you conduct yourself, your behavior when you're out there. You know, that is extremely important. I've basically lived here for about 30 years of my life. And I lived most of my life here in Ohio. I lived in some of the areas. I lived in Kentucky, which, you know, any of you who have been there, it's different. And I actually was there during 9/11. You know, but the thing is what really helped me in those times I was there, my family was there, is prior to that, we had an opportunity to build relationship with our neighbors. We had an opportunity to build relationship with our coworkers. And that really, even on that day, you know, my coworkers were there supporting me and asking if they could do anything for me. You know, even though our beliefs are totally different, but because of our relationship with them, and that's something that you have to work on. Because that really is going to be how we eradicate this. You know, sisters, you know, talked earlier about it, and Sheikh Jamal Badawi, you know, justice and you know, working with different organizations is the only way we really are going to have the application of justice and then ultimately, hopefully, peace, inshallah. If not in our lives, at least we work to have that in our kids' life. So it is very, very important for every one of you to take your role seriously, to take this responsibility seriously. And I really mean that. I mean, because a lot of times we come to lectures and we just listen just for the sake of listening, but we don't go home and we don't reflect. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge here, brothers and sisters who have come from different parts. So really try to listen to them and then try to, you know, learn from them, see how you can apply it in your life. Because it is critical. I mean, this is really a critical junction, you know, whether, you know, how our next decades and more are going to be here. The decisions that we make are, you know, we're really at a critical junction. So please, you know, I don't have a lot to say, but the point that I want you to get is that learn about the Prophet ﷺ and how he dealt with people, how he built relationship with people in good times and in bad times, and then try to apply that in your life. Because when you're out there working, you know, as an engineer, as doctors, mashallah, we are blessed with many professions. It really is going to make a difference how you act with your patient, how you deal with your coworker, how you deal with your neighbor. And I can assure you, like I said, I'm a living example. You know, lived in many states, New Hampshire, Boston, North Carolina, Kentucky, and here. And really, you know, your relationship with people is really going to be what's going to help you through these things. So build very strong relationships with your neighbors, your coworkers, and you know, keep working. Don't think, you know, unfortunately, because of the results of the election, you know, it seems like we put all Americans in one basket and say, well, all of them are racist or bigots or so on and so forth. Yeah, we have that. I mean, we have racism, we have bigotry, and it's not just directed against us, like the sister and the sheikh said. It's directed at many different people. But we have those same flaws. I mean, if you look at, you know, some of us where we come from and look at the situations there, there's racism there, there's bigotry there. So it's not, you know, don't put Americans in one basket that are all this way or they all hate us. They don't. A lot of them are confused just like us. You know, they don't know what's coming next. So they're almost in the same state. But the difference between us and them is we have guidance. We have hidayah. We have the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We also have the best human being who taught us how to apply that message. And the reason we got where we are today, and I mentioned this in several of my khutbah, is because we didn't take our job seriously. This is why we are here, is because we didn't. You know, a lot of us, when we're out there and have a business and we're dealing with people, we're trying to rip, whoever comes, we're just trying to rip them off, we're trying to take advantage of them. How do you think they're going to think of you? I can assure you, my brothers have many businesses here, And you know, some of the worst people they're dealing with are Muslims. That's unfortunate. But that's where it starts, because people, you know, they don't care about what you believe in that. It's how you deal with them. Are you applying that in your life or not? So that is critical. And I will end with, you know, many of us have heard this story, and this is, you know, a really, beautiful story about the Prophet ﷺ, and he was, when he brought his message to Mecca, and then this, you know, many of us have heard it, but just I think it's a good reminder. And it was mentioned, this was mentioned in one of the Sirah narrations, that an elderly woman who was trying to flee Mecca, was trying to leave Mecca, and she had a lot of things with her. You know, she threw everything on her camel, or I forget exactly what she had. But she was having some difficulty, but she wanted to leave because she believed that the man who came to Mecca, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is causing all of these issues and he's causing a lot of divisions, and you know, so she just wanted to get out. She didn't want to have anything to do with this place anymore. And but the Honorable Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sees this woman. He sees this woman, and he can see that she needs help. So she goes out and helps her load her belongings and begins to travel with her. But she said one thing. She said, you know, I have one condition. If you want to help me, I have one condition. That condition is, don't talk to me about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we will get along just fine. Because of him, there is no peace, and then there's trouble in my mind. And so they traveled together. They traveled together, and as time passed on, she spoke to him about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and about the issues that were brought. She kept on saying, you know, he's misleading people, and he's misleading the weak ones, the poor ones, and creating a lot of division. But ultimately, when they arrived at the destination, you know, she forgot. You know, she thanked him, but she forgot to ask his name. You know, she didn't know who she was traveling with. And then he said, my name is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then immediately she said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. She became a Muslim. She said, no, take me back with you to Mecca. So a very small example, but really the lessons are tremendous. There's a lot of lessons in this that, you know, if we take from the life of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I can assure you that we will make change of mind, you know, in the American people and in our neighbors, you know, because they're making some very bad conclusions about us, but those conclusions, some of them are our fault, and we have to work to change that narrative and change those conclusions that they make about us. I want to thank you again, and Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. Again. So, full disclosure, I struggle with this subject because there's a part of me that very strongly believes that you don't need to know me or like my religion to be okay with my human rights. And so, and at the same time, I'm like, but no, we need to go out and talk about our faith, and people need to know who we are. So I do have cognitive dissonance with this, right? My right to live, my right to practice my religion, my right to feel safe should not be predicated on anyone's understanding of why I wear a hijab or pray 5 times a day. You knowing me is not the determinant of whether or not I get to live free. Unfortunately, however, the people that make the decisions about whether or not I get to live free will often use the fact that people don't know me to leverage stripping me of my civil rights and liberties. And so we sort of sit at this intersection where I'm tired of trying to get your acceptance and trying to get you to like me and just smiling all the time and showing you that I'm a peaceful Muslim. But I also get that I have to do that to survive. When I think of Islamophobia, many of us think of like Pamela Geller, Stephen Emerson, Daniel Pipes, I don't know, this entire thing that we call an Islamophobia industry, $200+ million spent spreading hate, buying bus ads, training the police, and we wonder why they racially profile us, advocating for anti-Islam legislation, impacting the curriculum in public schools about Islam, right? So there are a number of states where there have been fights initiated to say we don't like the way you teach Islam. And the way public schools teach Islam is to say, here's a picture of a camel. Muslims in the Middle East ride camels. That's what the textbooks looked like when I was a kid, right? And they pray 5 times a day and they have these prophets. That's what they say. So there's all of this money being spent to spread fear of Islam and Muslims. I'm not a statistics type speaker. I just can't remember them. I can remember a lot of things, but I can't remember statistics, except for this one. Over 70% of Americans have never met a Muslim. So yeah, I'm really mad that I have to go around explaining my faith and hoping that they will accept me, but I'm also really cognizant of the fact that they're afraid of what they don't know. And it sounds ridiculous, but there are people that believe that everything they need to know about Islam they're learning on Fox News. Like that's a reality for many of our fellow Americans. When I ask audiences who are not Muslim in other spaces, including, by the way, in the Bay Area, how many of you know a Muslim? It's not a lot. One of the only things that we've seen that will actually change the way people perceive Islam and Muslims is whether or not they know one. So yeah, there's $200 million and there's these evil, malicious Islamophobes who'd like to spread hate full time. And who are they targeting? They're targeting that 70% who doesn't know us, who looks at me and like thinks of the angry Muslim person on television. Well, who looks at me and thinks of the oppressed like woman on television, right? When they look at my brother, my father, they see the angry Muslim man. But when they look at me, they see the oppressed person who needs saving. And so the need to get out there, though we're tired and we're exhausted at times of just having to explain ourselves, is critical. And we see that it's one of the main things that makes a difference. So I just wanted to walk through a few like practical steps. The first that I tell people is to wear your religion on your sleeve. So 10, 20 years ago, they used to say that you don't talk politics or religion at the dinner table, you don't talk politics or religion in the workplace. These days, all people are talking about is politics and religion. And so we need to be a part of that conversation. For Muslim women who choose to cover, they don't have a choice of whether or not they're visibly Muslim. They are. But for Muslim women who choose not to cover, there are other ways to display faith. For Muslim men, there are other ways to display faith. And so when I say, wear your religion on your sleeve, I am not advocating for anyone to wear their hijab or grow a beard. Like, it's not my place to tell you that. The sheikhs might say that. Not my place. What my place is to say is to make sure that everyone around you knows that you're a Muslim. But like, don't be that bad Muslim that wants to take someone's money or that is abusive or that is racist. One of the saddest conversations we have with Muslim children who are bullied is, what was your response? And in some cases, the Muslim children will say, well, I said this terrible word back, or I took the kids' iPod, right? And so it happens even with our kids. When we say we want people to like us, sometimes the way people's behavior is, I almost wish that they didn't display that they were Muslim. It would be better for us if certain people stayed in the shadows. But if we need to be out there, we need to be visible, we need to make sure that people know us, and that what they know of us is good. There's also a generation of activists that said that we have too many doctors and engineers, right? Some of you may remember that. With too many doctors and engineers, we need lawyers, social workers, teachers, journalists. Here's the thing. Doctors and engineers can donate to build your masjids. They can donate to build ISNA, they can donate to build care in a way that teachers just can't. And that's not to say that we shouldn't have teachers, it's to say that we should have diverse career options in our community. And it's not about encouraging people to do something that they don't want to do because it fits a mold that I've put out there, because I just need more Muslim lawyers. No, we should encourage people to do what they want to do and to excel in what they do. Because if you're a top-of-the-line engineer and you happen to be Muslim, people will notice, right? If you are a great doctor, the very personal care that you provide to people in need will have an impact on their perception of Islam and Muslims. They are not going to want, a sister was talking to me about this earlier, they don't want their Muslim doctor to skip work. They don't want their Muslim doctor sent to an internment camp because they think highly of Muslims based on their Muslim doctor. I know we live in really difficult times. Actually, one other thing about work is, again, and I'll say this probably in every talk that I give today, if all you're doing is going to work, coming to the masjid to pray, and then going home and paying your bills, you're not doing enough, right? And I don't want to comfort you and make you feel like you're doing a lot. You're not doing enough. You should be involved in the professional association at work. You should be involved in the union at work while you're wearing your religion on your sleeve and you're doing your work really well. The second thing is to smile everywhere we go. And it's like, some days I just don't feel like smiling. Like, I just don't. Like, I want to frown at everyone. Especially if I'm in a red state like Ohio, though I understand I'm in a blue county. But still, like, the whole state, guys. Like, we were waiting on you. But it's not just in our workplaces or with the people we know. It's about the interactions we have on the street. Does the local homeless person know that when a Muslim walks by, they will at least get a smile, if not cash, right? Do the wait staff at restaurants know that we tip generously, that we respect them and that we find dignity in all work? Do the police know that if they stop someone, the local member of the Muslim community will stop and record them, right? Like, do the people in our neighborhoods know what it means for us to live our faith? But if we're just going about our day, going to work, coming to the masjid, and paying our bills, and I remember those conversations growing up. We went to the masjid every day, and I think that that's very critical that we do. We used to joke that we sometimes got Saturdays off, but it was like Sunday through Friday, my family went to the masjid, but they also went to the PTA meetings and the city council meetings, and when teachers went on strike, we went out there to support them. We knew who our neighbors were. And then something else that came up in the Q&A, and the last one was participate, right? So we're doing it at work, we're doing it in our everyday lives, and by everyday lives, I just mean the people you're running into at the coffee shop, the people you're passing by on the street. But are we then also participating in our communities, right? If the local Black Lives Matter, if the local homeless feeding effort, if the local Christmas program doesn't know who the Muslims in the community are, we're not participating, right? We're not just showing up. Oftentimes that's the hardest thing in the first step. The last thing I'll talk about is our elected officials in the media. When we look at what the sources of Islamophobia are in our work at CARE, we say, hey, there's that $200 million that's being spent to demonize us. There's also the media, where if it bleeds, it leads, right? And elected officials who know that one of the fastest and easiest ways to get votes is through fear-mongering. And that's all elected officials from both of the major parties and even other parties, right? Like what we saw in the Democratic Party in this last election was please protect us from Trump. What we saw from the Green Party and the Libertarian Party was please protect us from the Democrats and the Republicans, right? Please protect us from more wars. And so fear sells. And if we're sitting out the conversation on elected officials and media, it's really great that we're in our neighborhoods, but if the people that are making the decisions don't know who we are, then like, why do they care what we think? Or why do they care about our safety? A couple of years ago, we did a letter writing campaign when apartheid Israel was yet again bombing Gaza. And we said, well, what can we do about this? We went to members of the Muslim community across the country and we said, we will print out the letters for you. You just have to sign them. And they go to your 2 senators. Collected thousands of letters in just a matter of days. But the part of that story that breaks my heart is how many Muslims I met who didn't know that they have 2 US senators. Like they didn't know that. I'm hoping that if you're at this conference, you know that you have 2 US senators and know their names and where they have offices, right? But if you don't know that you have 2 US senators, then you don't know their names and you don't know they have offices. And when they vote on funding for the military, when they vote on foreign military funding, why do they care what I think, right? Like I'm one person who's never met them, who's never reached them. Something that we said around elected officials in this whole race was there's a lot of focus on the president, a lot of focus, and I get it. It's an important race, but we also have a red Congress, and we will soon have a red Supreme Court, and that's just the federal government. When we're advocating for local policy changes on civil rights issues, for example, and law enforcement abuses, what we've come to understand is that local can sometimes become a check on federal and federal a check on the local. But ask anyone in the community who is on your city council, who is on your school board. They don't know. So when President Obama failed to close Guantanamo, do I say that he's free of blame? No, he's absolutely responsible for not fulfilling one of his campaign promises. But he blamed Congress, right? And Congress said, well, where are we going to move the detainees in North America? And local state elected officials were like, you're not moving them to our state, right? And so you see, even in some of the most critical issues where we want to blame the president, there are lots and lots of people involved. And so our elected officials need to see us, like they actually visibly need to see us at their meetings, at their events, at their coffee hours. They need to hear from us on a regular basis. The late Omar Ahmed, who was a community leader in the Bay Area and was mayor of San Carlos at one time, did a fabulous TED Talk on how if you just write to your elected officials like once a week in a handwritten letter, and I know like my handwriting is incoherent at this point because we type so much, right? So send an email, send a tweet, but if you just write to them once a week, once a month, they will know your name. Invite them to the masjid. Yes, invite them for the photo ops. Take pictures. If there were no pictures, it didn't happen, right? But ask them the difficult questions too. It's really cute that they know that they're supposed to take their shoes off. But what are they doing about the zoning laws that are sometimes impeding on our ability to build masjids? What are they doing about poverty in our communities? What are they doing about school funding? Media and the social media. So this is the last piece, right, is on the big picture items. The media frequently, disproportionately, puts out negative stories of Muslims. About 20 years ago, I had a friend who wanted to go into journalism. And her parents said to her, if you go into journalism, we won't pay for your college degree. Go to med school instead. She went to med school. We need doctors, but she wanted to be a journalist. And I know that her story is not unique. Now fast forward to today, when that family complains about what's on television, they're a part of the problem. Like they actually prevented the diversity of the newsroom back then. And so fast forward to today and it's not there. And we have people who want to do good in newsrooms, but we're not even present at the table. So when you're thinking about the media, it's a two-way street. We absolutely should hold them accountable. How many of you have shared a Facebook video in the last 10 days? Like a YouTube clip actually. Yeah, you've shared it, right? But because you were mad? How many of you did it because you were mad? Like it was a horrendous clip. A good clip? Okay, so we're not even sharing it on social media, which is frightening to me. Maybe it's because I'm from Silicon Valley. But a lot of times what we do is when we see something horrible on television, we talk about it at the dinner table, we yell about it with our families, or we share it on social media, right? But we never tell the anchor, the news outlet, or anyone involved in the actual making of it that we hated it and it was horrible and it was bad for the community. And on the flip side, even when it's good, we don't tell them. What I've heard from friendly reporters is that when they do a good story about Muslims, they get more hate mail than support mail, right? And they're saying, can you please give us the political cover that we need in our workplace to continue to cover your community in a positive way? So sure, we missed the boat 20 years ago on impacting journalism. It's not over. There are still kids in college. A significant percentage of our community is young people. You know people who want to be journalists. Make sure that they're going to journalism school. Make sure that they feel supported in the community. Make sure that they feel encouraged. And don't let it be a hindrance to them getting married either, right? Because that's the thing we won't say, is no one wants to marry the teachers and journalists. They want to marry the doctors and engineers, right? So be proud of the kids who are wanting to go into journalism. Don't make them feel embarrassed. Don't make them feel less. Because if we want to have an impact, if we want to reach 200, 300,000 people in 1 minute, the media is an important way to do it. I can talk about social media in the Q&A, but I know I've gone long. Jazakallah khair.
This doesn't work for a moment. This does not work. So I have to go back. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings upon the Messenger of Allah and his family and his companions. So several years ago, when I was on the board of CARE Ohio, it was about almost 10 years ago, there was a man in the community who was harassing us, mostly by email. One month I got probably 20 emails from this guy, angry, threatening, not able to hear. Okay, sorry. And we're having a few technical issues here with the double screens, but okay. So threatening, angry emails from this person, and he was also sending letters to the Columbus Dispatch with my name on them, the Columbus Muslim community, CARE Ohio, calling us terrorists. And since he was copying me on those letters, he had to have his full name, phone number, address, because that's what you have to submit to a letter to the editor. So I looked him up on Google. I knew who he was. I knew where he worked. And I figured out that he lived within half an hour of me. But Ashraf, can I just have you switch that up, because I can't find what happened. I'm sorry. If you don't mind, that would be easier. So I want to give you a taste of some of those emails. Oops. Okay, so the first email, one of the emails, yeah, that's fine, thank you. It read like this: are you a Democrat, Republican, or a Southerner? Here's a little test that will help you decide. The answer can be found by posing the following question. You are walking down a deserted street with your wife and 2 small children. Suddenly, an Islamic terrorist with a huge knife comes around the corner, locks eyes with you, screams obscenities, praises Allah, raises the knife, and charges at you. You are carrying a Glock Cal 40 and you are an expert shot. You have mere seconds before he reaches you and your family. What do you do? Here's the Democrats' answer. Well, that's not enough information to answer the question. Does the man look poor or oppressed? Have I done anything to him that would inspire him to attack? Could we run away? What does my wife think? What about the kids? What does the law say about this situation? And why am I carrying a loaded gun anyway? And what kind of message does that send to society and to my children? Does he definitely want to kill me, or would he be content just to wound me? Should I call 911? And why is this street so deserted? We need to raise taxes, have heat and weekday, and make this a happier, healthier street that would discourage such behavior. The Republicans' answer. Bang. The Southerners' answer. Bang, 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 click. Sounds of reloading. Bang, 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 click. And it went on. So, is this a threat? I mean, I'm getting these emails to my personal account. Obviously, in the public eye, is this a threat? Do I report this? He's calling us terrorists. He's talking about how he wants to deal with terrorists. Another email, terrorist hunting licenses go on sale today. No bag limit, open season 24/7, with the exception of Ramadan. Are these threats? So I did report it to the police. I gave them all the emails. I gave them the guy's phone number. I gave them his home address, for God's sake, and just said, hey, this is what's going on. Nothing happened. Nothing changed. The emails kept coming. So finally, we didn't really know what to do, so we just decided to take the guy to lunch and talk with him. We took him to the Turkish restaurant on Bethel Road. I think Cafe Kaba wasn't open at that time. We had a different choice. So Brother Bukarman, who was with us on the care board, he and I went. The guy was angry. He came. He was very angry. But underneath his anger, Brother Booker and I could tell there was fear. I mean, there was real fear. He was really afraid that Islamic terrorists, like what he saw in the news and saw after 9/11, were going to come and attack him and his family. And we, at that moment, even just sitting there, 2 average Muslims on the street, represented that threat to him. He was shaking, literally shaking with emotion, a grown man, when he described his fear and how he would protect his family. So we kept talking. It was an interesting discussion, a good discussion. We invited him to the CARE Ohio Interfaith Iftar as Ramadan was coming up. And he came, and he brought his significant other. Finally, the harassment stopped. The emails stopped. And actually, in fact, for the next 8 years, I got e-cards from this guy on holidays. Mother's Day, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, Happy Easter, literally until about 8 years after this. So I share this example to contribute to our discussion of Muslims in public discourse. I'm sure Brother Booker and I did not change his fear of terrorists, but at least we were able to humanize ourselves in his eyes and open a path to better understanding. My brothers and sisters, how should we conduct ourselves in the public sphere and in public discourse in these days of all these attacks on us? Attacks on us as Muslims, attacks on our children, our faith, our masajid, our beliefs, our sincerity, our very souls. How can we change things? And mashallah, Brother Noorgul and Sister Zahra have talked to you a little bit about what we should do in the open public sphere in terms of the example of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and some of the practical things that we can do. I wanted to approach the answer to this question perhaps in a more reflective and introspective manner. So when we are asking the question, how do we make it stop? How can we protect ourselves and make it change? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers this question directly in his book, in Surah Al-Ra'd, verse 11. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. So today we're asking our question, how can we change our condition? But the Quran is teaching us that to answer this question, we have to focus on the real question, which is how can we change ourselves? So I'm going to give you 4 suggestions of things we can do practically that will help us change ourselves, inshallah. And just to organize my thoughts, I put my suggestions in the form of an acrostic poem based on the word bir. Now you might not be familiar with the term acrostic poem, but it's basically a poem or reflection in which the first letter of each of the words is the beginning of each line. So using the Arabic roots ba, ra, ra, and I picked this word bir because it's used many times in the Quran and Hadith to describe virtue, to describe piety, to describe kindness and justice. And the same word is used to describe how we should treat people of other faiths, as well as how we should even treat our own parents. So let's get started. The first one I put, be for others. In changing ourselves, we need to remember how important it is to be for others. And I'd like to share this illustration. I'd like to illustrate this concept with a memory. And here's a photo. Does this look like a recent photo, like a digital photo? No. It's from the 1950s probably. It's a photo of my father. And I'm kind of honored to be sharing this memory with you, and we have our uncle and brother Khizr Khan with us today, reminding us of that importance of the father-child bond, and how that bond doesn't break even after one of the people has passed away. My father died in 1999 of colon cancer. May Allah have mercy on him. After he died, I was visiting my uncle in Pakistan, and it's my dad's older brother. We were sitting on the veranda in the house, the family house, and he brought out a box of these old pictures, photos I had never seen before, of my dad as a young man, growing up in Pakistan, as a teenager. And there were pictures in ways I couldn't even imagine my dad. Shoes off at the beach, rolled up, enjoying the sand with a bunch of his friends. Looking really cool in some dark sunglasses, on a wall. Sitting on the roof of a car with his friends. There was one of him on a motorcycle, and I remember looking at that thinking, my dad's a physician, very careful, cautious person. I'm like, Abu, you would never let us sit on a motorcycle, and maybe that was firsthand experience that he drew on. But there were images of my dad before he was a dad. And I got a glimpse into a time I never would have seen otherwise. And it was really touching to me. And my uncle was flipping through the pictures, and he's going, oh, here, you'll like this one. Here, take this one. Oh, this is a good one for you. He was giving me the photos. He was giving me these photos, of which there were no negatives, no duplicates, no scanners at that time. And it was his younger brother who had just died. We were all hurting. And in his kindness, he didn't even hesitate. He knew that I, as his daughter, was hurting as well, and he wanted to give them to me. Fast forward to years later, I came back to America at that time with this priceless treasure trove of these pictures of my dad. And so once scanners were invented and stuff, I decided, okay, I'm going to make a photo album for my relatives and stuff. And I used a lot of the pictures that he had given me and some pictures that I had, and I put them into albums, and I took them back with me to Pakistan almost a decade later. And what happened was my uncle was totally amazed, because at his house, at the family home in Pakistan, there had been a flood. And the box, the sanduq of the old pictures had been destroyed. So all those pictures were gone. If he had clung to them, if he had kept them, which would have been very understandable, right? It was his younger brother. If he had kept them, they would have been lost. But what he gave in his kindness was what was saved. what he donated, what he gave of himself, what he gave to his niece, were what remained. And this memory reminds me of the hadith that, by Aisha radiallahu anha, in which there was a sheep and it was slaughtered and the meat was distributed to a bunch of people. And then the Prophet came and said, what's left of it? And Aisha replied, nothing remains, nothing is left except the shoulder. And the Prophet said, all of it remains except the shoulder. And what does that mean? I find this hadith to be so powerful when you reflect on its meaning. I can imagine Aisha radiallahu anha, the Prophet's coming home, time for dinner, what's left? She said, I'm sorry, everything else was all given away to the poor. It's just the shoulder that's left. And he was clarifying for her that actually, no, Aisha, what we eat ourselves of this, that's what's going to be lost, and that's what's going to disappear. What was given away in kindness will remain forever and testify for you before Allah on the Day of Judgment. So what we eat is the part that's lost. What we consume, what we keep to ourselves, what we hoard, what we keep in our back pocket, that is what is lost eventually when we go. But what we give away is what will remain. So I think of my uncle whenever I am reminded of this teaching, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saw fit to return the photos that he gave in his kindness to me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saw fit to return them to him in this life. But more importantly, inshallah, they will be a testimony to his kindness for him in the next life. My brothers and my sisters, whenever you give of yourself, what you have and what the gifts are that Allah has given you, that is not going to be lost. That action, that putting out there of the goodness that you have is never going to be lost. Your money, your efforts, your talents, your skills, whatever you have, that charity, that sadaqah will remain with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with you on the Day of Judgment. It will be returned to you manyfold, inshallah, in this life and for sure in the next life. So to change ourselves in terms of the four pieces of advice, we have to give of ourselves of the gifts that Allah has given us. Please don't isolate yourselves at this time. Don't withdraw. Don't keep those gifts to yourself. You've got to put them out there. And don't think that, I can't donate, $10,000 to this masjid, and I can't organize a rally, and I've never spoken in front of anybody. Don't think that. The gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, He gave you for a reason, for a specific purpose. I remember the ISNA meeting, the planning meeting for the Nadim. He was here, he was saying, what I can give is I take pictures. That's what I can do for you. But mashallah, may Allah put barakah in the effort. These pictures will go on the websites, they'll go on the cameras, they'll go on the internet, and people will learn, and people will be inspired, inshallah, by his small work that he can do. This is what you can give. So use the gifts that Allah has given you in whatever they are and be for others. So for the I put inspiration. We need to keep our sources of inspiration in front of us. Brothers and sisters, we need to stay focused. We have to stay focused. It's really important. We cannot let ourselves get distracted at a time like this. Emotions like anger, fear, anxiety, these can all contribute to our getting distracted from the work that needs to be done, and we cannot do that right now. We have to keep focused on our values and living those values, and in order to help us keep focused, we have to keep our sources of inspiration front and center, right in front of us. I want to share one other story about this. When I first started my bioethics rotation, and bioethics, or actually it's a fellowship I did a couple years ago, it struggles with questions of what is right and wrong in medicine, especially with new emerging technologies. And if people have a question about what's right and wrong, sometimes they'll call for an ethics consult. And my very first day of the fellowship, when I walked into the office of the clinical director who was doing all the ethics consults, who I was going to learn from, I looked around his office, and he had a bunch of papers, and a lot of articles and things like that. And he had a big bulletin board on the back of his office desk. But the bulletin board was completely empty, except for one word that was pinned onto that bulletin board. And I thought of taking a picture of it, and I thought, well, maybe it's not really ethical to take a picture of somebody else's office without asking them. But it was like my first day, so I thought maybe it was okay or not. But I didn't take a picture of it, but I recreated it for you here. He had one word on that bulletin board. What do you think that word was? Any ideas? Say it loud. Inspiration, no. Good try. What else?
Ethics.
Ethics, no. Focus, no. Integrity, no. The word was courage. The word was courage. But not so much that it was this particular word. I mean, he knew, Dr. Bob Taylor, he knew that it takes courage to have faith and to do the right thing and to stay on the right path. But more importantly, he kept what was important to him, what inspired him, on that bulletin board. When I set up my home office many years ago, I have a whole file folder of all kinds of inspiring things. I was going to put all this stuff all in my office and put it right in front of me. And when I write my articles and stuff, I have all this stuff there. But of course, like many of the projects I like to do, it never got done, and I still have that folder full of everything. But I took one bumper sticker out of that file, and I put it up on my office wall the day that I made the office, because I didn't want even a day to go by where I didn't have that in front of me. And this is the bumper sticker. It meant something to me. Give thanks in all things, for this is the will of Allah. I didn't want to ever forget that. So I'm going to give you a challenge. Distill down what is important for you. Find 2 or 3 sources of inspiration. It could be an ayah from the Quran or the Hadith. It could be an inspirational quote. It could be an object that's meaningful for you, a photograph, and put it in a place that you're going to see it. Put it on your fridge. Hang it from your rearview mirror. Put it on your computer screen, on your cell phone wallpaper. In front of you, so that when you start to get distracted, when you start to get anxious, when you feel that fear that's coming up, it's happening, that inspirational thing is right in front of you, and it can guide you back to your guidepost so you stay focused. I want to share that I gave this talk and gave this advice to an interfaith group one time, and a Christian minister came up afterwards, and she said, you know, after your talk, I put this picture on my cell phone as a reminder from the riots in Baltimore about kids who are reaching out to the police and doing something kind and compassionate in a time when everything was falling apart for them. So she put that on her as a wallpaper on her cell phone to keep her focused. The third thing, remember why we are given trials and tribulations in this life. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it so hard for us sometimes? I know often reflexively answer yes, it's a test from Allah, we know it's a test. But even if we know on some level it's a test, we still ask the question why. Why do I have to go through this test? Why me? Why now? Why like this? So when we reflect on why Allah gives us tests, it can help us to pass them. He gives us tests and trials so that we may become closer to Him. When we are under hardship, we call on Him with a sincerity and a devotion that most of the time we don't achieve any other time in our life. And many times it takes that hardship to shake us out of the ghafla and the heedlessness that we are immersed in to really realize what's important, which is our relationship with Him and our focus on the goals of doing what is pleasing to Him. Hardships can get us to that most important place. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us tests so that we can learn to be patient and elevate our character. He loves the sabirin, the patient. And when we are tested and show patience, He forgives our sins, like leaves falling away from a tree. We are tested to strengthen us, so that He may use our shoulders and our backs to carry on the work that needs to be done in this world. A strong believer is better than a weak believer, and tests, hardships can make us into those strong believers. We are tested to put in the record, in the eternal record, what we will do so that it is clear how we reacted. On the day of judgment, it is what we do that counts, not what we said we would have done had we been given the chance. He tests us to raise our status in Jannah. Perhaps He knows that with what He gave you, you can be up here on a very high level of Jannah. But without this hardship, you're sitting around flipping channels, kind of just doing whatever you're normally doing. And you're not going to reach that if it goes on like it does. But when He puts pressure, He puts hardship on you, and you rise to the occasion, you can reach that level of Jannah that He made you, He created you for. And it took a hardship to do it. We also need to remember that our beloved Prophet ﷺ said, the tests and trials that are given to us, they are given in greater abundance to the people, the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves, and the ones that He wants good for. Remember, my brothers and sisters, our scholars, including Sheikh Yasser Qadri, as they explained, when you think about the word for test, fitna, fatanun, it has many meanings, and we're familiar with some of them. Trial, temptation, affliction, distress, we know that. But remember that in Arabic, these roots are used in many different ways, and we can learn from how the roots are used in other words. A goldsmith in Arabic is called a fatan, from the same root letters, from the verb fatana. It's the idea of this process of taking raw ore and putting it under extreme heat and pressure. It takes 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit to melt gold. But that process gets the dirt and the sand and the impurities out of that gold to purify it so that it becomes beautiful and pure. And we can understand that this is part of the reason for this word fitna and the reason that we go through these things. And finally, my brothers and my sisters, reflect on his verses. Reflect on the verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, his book. Build a connection with the Quran. Listen to his speech, and he will speak directly to you in the Quran. To conclude, I'd like to just remind, as we look to the Quran for our reflection, he has told us in his noble book, as we reflect on his verses, that he will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. So what are some of the concrete ways that we can change ourselves? Be for others. Keep your sources of inspiration in front of you. Remember why we are given trials and hardships and tribulations in this life, and reflect on the verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah accept our efforts, put barakah in our work, and bless us with success as He defines it, inshallah.
I know we're getting close. We did start a few minutes late. I would like to give somebody the opportunity, if you have one or two pertinent questions for this esteemed panel, because they have a lot of information packed into such a short time there. Any quick questions before we have to kind of break and get ready for the next session?
Assalamu alaikum. Well, I really enjoyed the presentations of everyone in the panel. So I really hope that this will continue to remember, and we need to have recordings of all the proceedings. But what I want to say is that I want to address the question of I versus we. Now, when we say I, we say, how are we close to being like Prophet Muhammad? How many of you feel or behave like Prophet Muhammad? My name is Ishaq. My father Yaqub. My mother Sarah. My brothers Yusuf. And then David. And then Musa. And then Muhammad Farouk. But for me, I was not behaving as a prophet. But when I went to Mecca, to Hajj, that changed my life. I'm closer to Allah, I'm closer to Prophet Muhammad. When I say I, that means me as a Muslim. But when we say we, this is the question I want to really address. We can say we as a family. We can say we as neighborhood. We can say we as Muslims. We can say we as Pakistani, Palestinian, Syrian, whatever. We. But we have not addressed the question of being we as Muslims. In the day of judgment, God will not ask you about your passport. He will ask you about your belief. Second, when we say we have to start with not ending with being a Muslim, but being also an American. In the Constitution of USA, there is nothing related to any religion or any nationality or any minority. So that's why it's a long process to include anything in the Constitution against Muslim or Islamophobia or whatever. So we have also really to think and teach our children how to be as we instead of I, be Muslim and American. We have to exercise our rights along these levels, and the speakers did a good job in explaining how and where and how we can do it. Thank you.
I'm thinking that, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to do the reminders here, but the MINA and MSA sessions will be upstairs. Don't leave yet. We aren't closed up yet, but Those are not to be missed by our youth. So if you need to go, I don't think this is working, is it? But I'm loud, so you can all hear me. Anything else?
I just wanted to, I just wanted to add one more thing about.
It's on.
I just wanted to say one more thing, about obviously how we build relationships, and that's kind of what I covered. But I wanted to just kind of lighten the mood, and my father and my mother, those of you who know them, they don't speak any English. And they came here when they were very old. But I remember, one instance, and that kind of has stuck with me, that even if you don't speak language, just by your character and your behavior, people can figure out, your value, you're important. So when I got my job in Kentucky, I was still living with my parents. So my company, part of the move, they sent a truck to pick up my belongings from my parents' house. And so that day, all of the neighbors were coming and just, they were kind of anxious and saying, well, where are you guys going? Why are you guys moving? And so, and everybody was just coming in. And one of the things my dad used to do, and he still does here, but he used to walk around the neighborhood a lot throughout the day. Most of the people are usually working. But the neighbor loved that. The fact that he was there, even though he was just doing it for the exercise, but still, they enjoyed that comfort that even if they're not there, somebody's watching. So these neighbors were coming, and eventually I kind of stepped in there and I said, hey, I know my parents are staying. I'm moving. I got a job in another state. They said, oh, that's okay. We don't care about you moving as long as your parents don't move. So I just wanted to end with that and share with you that.
That is so true. Sometimes a lot shines through without any words at all. So in closing, I just certainly want to ask that, may Allah bless this gathering with His infinite bounty. And may we take from this session that which will be a benefit for us, our families, and for our country as we work to build the communities that we all aspire to be a part of. Okay? Thank you.